Hello, this is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Monday, the 8th of March, 2021. We have just taken the quiz from the Baker Workbook for Chapter 7. You at home should do the same thing. Also you at home should make sure that you photograph your work and turn it in to me if you have not already done so. The due date is today by 3 p.m. for the chapter survey, and I expect the quiz done today also. So you should have your notes out, please, and by the time we finished on Friday, I had told you about the many interesting stories of the Julio Claudius and the Civil War, the year four emperors, and the Flavians. But the Flavians are practically pedestrian compared to personalities like Tiberius and Caligula and Nero. Those guys made being emperor interesting for historians and horrible for the people who had to live through, if they even lived through their reigns. That didn't always happen. During their period, though, away from their personal lives, the empire was basically governed very effectively. And it was still a growing empire. It was a growing concern. So we're going to look at some of the characteristics of the Roman Empire during the first century of its existence, during the time of the Principate. And first off, the status of the city of Rome. The city of Rome is the capital of an empire. No city in the empire even comes close to Rome in terms of population or power, status. It is the economic hub of the Western world. I mean, there's Alexandria in the east, but it's owned by the emperor personally. So as important as a city as Alexandria will become, it is still recovering from the time when Cleopatra tried fighting Augustus. Rome is unique in the empire. This won't always be the case. But during the first century of Rome's existence, during the Principate, what forever so humble, there's no place like Rome. I had to. It's a dad joke, but there it is. The Roman Empire is still expanding. So, the extra area of the Iberian Peninsula is conquered by Augustus. And areas in the Balkans are conquered all the way up to the Danube River. And all the way up to the Rhine River on the German frontier. And Claudius conquers what we would now call England and Wales. He conquers the southern half, and ultimately it'll be more than half. It'll be about 2/3 or 3/4 of the island of Britain. The Romans never get to Ireland, but they do get pretty far up the island of Britain. Claudius starts that. In the east, the borders between Roman Syria and Parthian Mesopotamia are fairly stable. Fairly. There are occasional wars. Rome tends to win them. Other than that, the only military challenge to Rome is that of raiding parties. And the Romans are pretty darn aggressive at going after anyone who raids into their territory and punishing them. Now, there is a policy which is going to be oh so hard to understand based on its name. But you're smart. I'm sure you'll figure it out. The policy is called Romanization. And what Romanization is getting the people of the empire that aren't Roman by blood or culture to become Greek or Latin speakers, to begin living like Romans, trading like Romans, eating like Romans, bathing like Romans, thinking like Romans. Romanization involves the building of many cities around the empire in places where Romans have not lived before. And these cities, like for the Greeks, are going to be seeds of civilization. the Romans are going to come and they're going to set up a beautiful city with baths and with other luxuries, an amphitheater, some temples, a forum. And what they'll do is they'll encourage people from the countryside to come into the city and trade because they'll make money. And as the people come in from the countryside and trade and make money, well, people sometimes become friends. And sometimes young men and young women notice one another. And they become friends, or more than friends. And you end up with intermarriage, blended ethnicity. But the longer those cities are there around the empire, the more that the people of the empire are no longer Iberians or Celt-Iberians or Britons or Gauls or even the few Germans that are in their realm, Illyrians or Moesians or Thracians, Egyptians, Mauritanians, Numidians, Carthaginians, Egyptians, Syrians, Jews. Instead, as time goes on, more and more of these different peoples, whatever the color of their skin, and the Romans are not racist. They learn Greek, they learn Latin, they learn to think like Romans, they read Roman history, Roman philosophy, they go to the baths. These people become Roman in every way that matters. And many of the people become citizens. Not all, not even close to all, not most, but many. Many of the people become Roman citizens. So in the course of this Romanization, which is going to take centuries, Mira, what happens is the people of Rome are no longer ethnically Italian. Buddy? Not here, is she? Ava? Here. So, Romanization is something you need to understand. To the point where, by the time the Roman Empire gets old and gray, Rome doesn't worry about a lot of its own people betraying it. Because regardless of whether they are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, cream-skinned Germans or red-haired, green-eyed, freckle-faced Irish Celts, or French or British Celts, or whether they are olive-skinned, dark-haired Italians, or even darker olive-skinned Egyptians, all of these people are Roman. And their Romanness is something that they don't want to give up. That takes a few hundred years. But the process begins in earnest during the Principate. And it is going to be among the most successful campaigns of this kind in the world. Since Roman times, again and again, Europe's empires will try to do their version of Romanization. The Russians called it Russification. Others called it different things. And when Europe in the 1800s conquers the rest of the world, they try Europeanizing the various peoples of Africa and Asia that they have in their midst. The Spaniards and Portuguese try to do that in Latin America, so do the French to an extent in Canada. And the British do as well. But most of those people weren't there long enough. The average age of the European empires in the rest of the world in the 1800s and early 1900s was maybe 50 to 150 years. Not much more than that in most cases, except the Spanish and Portuguese territories. Romanization, or the spreading of one culture to many peoples, takes centuries. People need to buy into it. That takes time. A lot of time. Generations upon generations. So, this is one of the most important concepts you need to know, Romanization. Now, if you look in your notes, you will see a diagram after the maps and pictures. And the diagram will be for military strategy. The page will look like this. It's very good. These are 3 approaches to military strategy. Now, military strategy is the way the empire prepares to win its wars. There you go. A little more. Where's there the other one? Oh. Well, do you have it? Okay. Strategy is what you do to win a war. Tactics is what you do to win a battle. So the grand strategy of the Roman Empire is established during the Principate as being the one on the top, which is a strategy of what is called forward defense. Now, if you look at this diagram, you'll see a river about halfway to 2/3 of the way up this drawing. South of that river are 3 hills. The different elevations are shaded differently. The high country is stippled with little dots. The medium range hillsides are the diagonal lines. There's a Roman city on the southern edge of the map. There are Roman towns and roads stretching out from the city northward. And there's another city on the river frontier. And there is a Roman road along the river, along the frontier. Now, the Romans used a lot of rivers as frontiers. Remember the Rhine, Danube. But during the time of forward defense, the Romans would also take advantageous territory across the river. So the Romans, in this case, occupies the hills to the north of the river on the right side or eastern side of the map. So you see that little area of hills with the Roman border on it. Well, why do the Romans do that? Because the high ground is an advantage unless you're fighting with lightsabers. If you're fighting with lightsabers, there's no high ground advantage. Obi-Wan's a moron. I have the high ground, Anakin. Really? So that means I can cut your ankles off and you can't block me. Sorry, high ground matters in gun warfare and in spear warfare, not in lightsaber combat. Stupid. Not as stupid as Disney Star Wars, but still stupid. So, not much is dumber than Disney Star Wars. You'll see at the top of the map 4 white arrows. That is the Barbarian Threat, and there are other threats as well. Now, you see a bunch of black arrows coming out of the Roman hill country north of the river, out of the Roman city, and out of Roman bases to face them, north of the river. Forward defense means we don't wait for the enemy to land in our laps before we fight them. We have agents out among the barbarians spying for us. These agents will report if the natives get restless. And if the natives get restless and start making trouble, we're not going to wait for them. We're going to go out and we're going to smack them down on their territory. We're going to fight them on their ground. Now this, by the way, is the preferred American approach to war. We haven't, thank God, had to fight a war on our soil since 1865 if you're talking about Europeans fighting Europeans. And the Indian Wars end by about 1900 or so. So 120 years ago.
Is this where the term the best defense is a good offense comes from?
In effect, yes. If you can pull it off. To fight forward defense style, like we did fighting in Vietnam and Korea and in Europe in World War II and the Pacific in World War II, like we have fought the war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the world, we do that so that we don't have to fight here. Warfare on your own soil is a bloody disaster. Your cities get burned, your women get raped, your children get enslaved and brutalized, your men get killed. In fact, all sorts of people get killed. There's lots of fire going on, there's lots of suffering going on. You do not want to have to fight a war on your own territory. The only advantage is it's your home turf. You know the territory probably better than anyone else does. But still, you're fighting on your land. It's your fields that are getting burned, your towns that are getting destroyed. Again, your families that are getting brutalized. So we don't like to fight that way. When possible, the United States goes out and fights wars in other people's countries. And there are a bunch of people who say, hey, why are we fighting all over the world? Are we the world's policemen? Yeah. Who else? You want the Chinese Communist Party to be the world's policeman? You want there to be no policemen in a global anarchy, which is going to descend to inevitable war in an atomic age? Damn right we fight wars overseas, and we do it to prevent war from coming to these shores. 9/11 provoked a number of these wars because terror attacks did come to our shores. Thousands of Americans were killed. The city of New York was brutalized. So was Washington, D.C. You didn't live through it. You don't understand. I didn't live through World War II. I don't understand beyond a certain point. God forbid we ever have to fight a war on our territory. God forbid our cities get bombed, our fields get burned, our power grid gets zapped, our people get brutalized. The Romans don't want that. We don't either. No sane person would. So, the Romans fight a strategy called forward defense. They go out and they meet the enemy on the enemy's turf and they fight them and they beat them. Now, to do this, your troops need to be sufficiently superior to the enemy to offset any home field advantage that they have. If the Germans or the Celts or the Picts or whoever the Romans are fighting, if they know the Romans are coming, they'll draw the Romans into a trap. The Romans have to be superior to them in their fighting, because if they're not, the natives will outnumber the Romans, or they'll use the local geography against the Romans. The Romans have to be much better than their native enemies. And during the Principate, they basically are. There are a couple of battles, like the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, that are lost. Teutoburger Wall, the one with Germans, German Hermann, Arminius, and the defeat of the Roman legions under Quintilius Varus. That's an exception. For the most part, Roman arms are victorious because Roman soldiers in this time are professional soldiers. This is important to understand. The Roman soldiers of the early empire, the Principate and the Pax Romana, are not citizen soldiers exactly. They're not everyday guys who leave their farms for a few years to fight and then go back home and continue. The Roman soldiers serve for their entire careers in the army, and they retire. Gaius Marius starts this tradition. Remember, he promised his soldiers that if they fought for him for 20 years, he'd pay for their retirement. Well, Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar and the emperors all follow that logic. If a man gives you 20 years of his life and lives through all of that, he deserves a retirement. Remember, the average life expectancy is about 20, 25 years old. So living into your 35 or 40, which is retirement age for a Roman legionary, is not an easy thing to do. And living through the warfare that a legionary is supposed to do for a living is also not easy to do. But the Romans, those who live, they have nice retirements. In fact, the Romanization is aided by the retiring professional soldiers. Because when they retire, they're not given land in Italy. They're given land in Gaul. They're given land in Britain. They're given land on the frontier. They get to establish new towns where they're the leading citizens. They get to establish new fields, new homes, new relationships with the natives. By seeding Roman veteran communities around the empire, the Roman Empire becomes more tightly knit because Romanization is enhanced, because these veterans are pretty competent fellows. They got good common sense. They're tough guys, but they're not idiots and bullies. For the most part, they help the empire and the peoples of the empire to reconcile themselves with Roman rule. They are good salesmen for the empire. It's like the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps are a group of idealistic young Americans who are good salesmen for the United States. They go out and they help people get clean water and make sure they don't draw their water from their latrine areas and try to help them grow better food. And they don't do this for money. The American taxpayer pays for it. But the Peace Corps is there in order to show the people of the world that Americans, for the most part, are pretty darn decent people who would be happy if there was no more poverty in the world, no more preventable disease, no more dysentery and cholera and all the other nasty preventable diseases that come from filth. Well, the Roman veterans, the legionaries who retire, they're like that. They're salesmen for Rome. Heck, even the Bible, the New Testament, always shows centurions in a good light. Centurions are like Roman sergeants. But these professional soldiers, what stands out about them during their 20 years is they learn and they learn and they learn and they learn. What else is a Roman soldier besides a fighting man? There's another profession that all Roman soldiers have, and we talked about this. They're engineers. They know how to dig ditches, build bridges, build roads, build forts. They know how to repair things. They know how to make carts roll. They're fix-it men as well as fighting men. Yeah.
So they're kind of like the Seabees?
Yeah. In fact, our Seabees are based a lot on what the Romans do. I love the Seabees.
Yeah, my dad worked with.
That's tough work. What the Seabees are, they were established in World War II. It comes from the acronym for construction brigades or battalions. And what they do is they go into war zones, into combat, and they build things under fire. There's a wonderful movie about them from World War II called The Fighting Seabees with John Wayne, which is a fun black and white World War II movie. But basically, imagine a construction worker who goes into battle. It's tough work, but it's good work. So the entire Roman military is like that. And because they're professional soldiers, the Roman army is man for man better than any barbarian unit. Even though the Romans are shorter than the barbarians, less muscular than the barbarians, the Romans know how to wage war better than the barbarians. And that's why they have the empire. The skill of the fighting man. And wherever Roman legions go, roads are built, forts are built, cities and towns are built. Clean water is brought in. No one does water like the Romans in ancient times. Everyone in ancient times suffers from polluted water, drinking water that's befouled by human waste. Not the Romans. The Romans, with their aqueducts, their highways for water, bring water in from hundreds of miles away. And who builds the aqueducts? Not slaves, the Roman soldier. So these professional soldiers and their strategy of forward defense keep warfare outside the empire, and they allow the empire to become peaceful. We assume that civilian life is normal. We assume that living a life outside the military is normal. In fact, we are so lucky. We assume that we can go to sleep at night and not have to worry about our house being broken into, our goods being stolen, about being attacked on the street on the way to school or at school, for the most part. Why do we assume this? Because the American military and the American police forces make it so. American democracy produces some of the most effective police and soldiers on earth. Now, our legal system has some problems, but all legal systems have their problems. Corruption, other things like that. I don't think that any of you, unless, God forbid, you're in a household where there's a family member that abuses you, goes to bed afraid that somebody is going to break in and hurt you or hurt your loved ones or take your stuff, or that on your way to school, bandits are going to stop your car at a red light and rob you and maybe kill you and leave you on the road. But that fear of being victimized is normal. In normal societies throughout history, those hills over there, the Canfield Bluffs and Best Hill and all that, and the countryside beyond, there'd be bandits there. And every so often they'd come down from the hills and they'd steal from the houses nearby. There'd be people out on the prairie coming in and raiding. There'd be street gangs in the city that would, again, raid into people's homes. We don't live like that. God willing, we won't live like that for a good long time, because that's a sign of a failed society. The Romans don't live like that either. But this is the first time that such a big chunk of the world has peace and prosperity, enough for civilians to become the norm. And so I'm going to put that here. Write this word down. C-I-V-I-L-I-A-N. Civilian. C-I-V-I-L-I-A-N. Civilian. C-I-V-I-L-I-A-N. Civilian. It comes from the word civitas, just civics does. City does. A civilian is a person of the city, but what it really is a person who can live at peace. At peace. A person who can live at peace, protected by the military and law. A person who can live at peace, protected by the military and law. That is a civilian. A person who can live at peace, protected by the military and law. Everyone at this school right now is a civilian. Student, teacher, everyone. Some of the teachers and other staff have been in the service. Some have not. Most have not. Some of you come from military families. Most of you don't. Some of you come from police families. Most of you don't. What the military and the police understand, I come from a police family, is that the world isn't safe, even here, even now. Horrible things are happening in this very city as we speak. And the only reason it doesn't get worse is because people are willing to step out of safety into danger to keep the peace. Police officers, firemen, ambulance workers, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guarders, all of it. All of this security that we take for granted is provided by the willing service of people who go towards danger when sane people run away. Without their courage, we wouldn't have what we have. And you wouldn't have what you have, because people would take it from you. You'd constantly be at risk of being robbed, of being beaten, of worse. The Romans, for the most part, don't face that. Not unless they're slaves. Slaves, you know. So, let's look now at the economy, unless there are any questions about the whole civilian thing. The economy is the system of buying and selling that allows trade to function. I've already told you, Augustus lowers taxes, allowing people to keep more of their money, which allows the economy to boom. When you have higher taxes, the economy slows down because people have less profit that they can make, because most of it goes to the government. When you lower taxes, there's more profit, people become more aggressive in their business dealings, and the economy tends to employ more people, and there tends to be less misery. In addition to lowering taxes, though, Augustus's system increases the peace and increases the civilian lifestyle. This is what we were talking about. Internal peace means the increase of civilian lifestyles. And what the empire becomes is one vast market. You see the black-faced clock over there? Down and to the right of it is a basic map of the Roman Empire. It wraps around the Mediterranean Sea. Imagine that you're an olive grower in Judea or in Syria, on the right side shore of the Mediterranean Sea. Now you could sell your olive oil in Syria or Jerusalem, and you'd make some money, and you'd make a living, but there are lots of olive groves. What if you want to sell your olive oil to Britain? Olives don't grow in Britain, but people in Britain need olive oil, because the Romans used olive oil for soap, for industrial lubricant. They use it as a basis for scented oil. They use it as a salad dressing. They use it in their cooking. They use it as a cleaning thing, as I said, like soap. You douse yourself with olive oil and then scrape yourself with a dull metal rod, getting all the dirt out of your skin. The Romans use olive oil as a delivery system for medication, and they use olive oil for lamp oil. So if I can get my olive oil reliably to Britain where it doesn't grow, I can sell it at a much higher price. Now, of course, I'm going to have to spend money on shipping it there. I'm going to have to hope that pirates are stopped by the Roman Navy, which for the most part they are at this point in time. I'm going to hope that the ships aren't sunk in storms or they don't crash up against the rocky shores or any of that. But I'm going to take the gamble. My olive oil from Syria or Judea, I should know where my farm is, where my orchard is, where my, what do you call an olive grove? An olive grove. Where my olive grove is, I'll say it's in Syria. I'm shipping all of my olive oil to Britannia, and I'm going to make a bunch of money that'll allow me to pay for the shipping and then some. In other words, I'm gambling that long-distance trade is going to make me wealthier than my neighbors who sell locally. And you know what? Under the Principate, that system works. People ship Syrian olive oil to Britain. They ship products that you can only get in Britain to Syria. The empire becomes one vast market. And look at all the climate zones you have, from the central island of Britain to northern France and Belgium and Spain and Portugal. I'm using modern names. To Turkey and Greece, North Africa and Egypt, Judea and Palestine. I'm sorry, Judea and Syria. All of these areas grow different products. You can ranch different things, you can farm different things, you can fish for different things. And there are different people in different areas with different skills. By turning the empire into one vast market, everyone's living standard begins to improve. It's like us. We eat fruit all year in my house. We also have ice cream all year in my house. Fruit doesn't grow around here in the wintertime. Fruit doesn't grow anywhere in the wintertime unless you have a greenhouse. So where do we get our fruit in the winter? Where do we get our fruit this time of year? We get it from the southern hemisphere. Chile, places like that. We get it from the southern United States, where they have a much longer growing season. Oranges from Florida or California. So Americans, right now, for the most part, who are blessed by the peace that our military and police provide, can eat fresh fruit all year round, shipped to us from all over the world. Because we have made, the world a giant market. If you want, you can get pasta made in Italy. You can get soy sauce made in Taiwan or Japan. You can go out for sushi. You can go out for Chinese food. We have made the world one giant market. And one of the problems that we face is, say I want to make backyard grills. I want to make charcoal grills. I think I have a better idea for them. And so I want to get a factory that's going to build my charcoal grills. You know where the factory's probably going to be? India, maybe China, not down the street. American factory workers make between $50 and $30 an hour. In America, I have to worry about all sorts of environmental regulations that increases the cost of business. I have to worry about making sure that my unions are allowed to, my workers are allowed to unionize. I have to make sure about workplace safety laws. I have to make sure that my chemicals are all labeled properly and handled properly. I've got to make sure that I have a human resources department so that nobody is abused at work. I've got to make sure that I prove that I'm not discriminating. You know what I don't have to do in India? Any of those things. In China? Any of those things. I can pay the factory workers $1.50 an hour and they'll like it. Because in their economy, that'll give them a lot of money compared to other people. And I don't have to worry about that other stuff. So if you wonder why so many Americans buy stuff from overseas and don't build it here, it's because it's much more expensive and much more obnoxious to build things here. I would like it to be different. But for it to be different, American workers might have to accept less money, and the environmental and safety regulations might need to be relaxed a little bit. Otherwise, nobody in their right mind would build anything in the United States. And that means all sorts of people who aren't really suited to college don't get jobs. The great thing about a factory economy, anyone can be a factory worker as long as they're willing to work hard. You don't need a college degree to make a decent living for you and your family. Factory workers in the 1950s and 60s supported their families on one income. Not now. So, by making the empire one big market, the Romans improve everyone's lifestyle by allowing people to trade at long distance and get products they otherwise wouldn't get. The stuff about cheaper production also plays a role. Yeah, there are some, but for the most part, Romans did much of their stuff locally. It was just too expensive to ship some things by long distance. So, for example, whatever grain is grown locally, you're probably going to eat. You're probably not going to ship something like rice or wheat, except by sea from Egypt to Rome. Religious and social. Yeah, I guess I'll hit this today. Pagan Romans are losing interest in the Olympian gods. When we talked about Christianity, I talked a lot about this. It simply is not true that Zeus or Hera offer much comfort to people who have relatives who are sick or dying. It is simply less and less true that the Olympian gods are able to offer satisfying answers to the big questions in life. So, Rome's official religion, its state paganism, becomes more about government than it does about faith. In fact, the high priests of the Roman state religion are all politicians. When the Romans are going into battle, before the battle, they'll have a sacrifice, and the priest will predict victory. Why? Because the animal entrails came out good. But what if the general wants to wait, and he doesn't want to tell his troops, if we fight now, we're going to lose. If we wait for reinforcements, we'll win. The priest will accidentally slit the bile gland. And in doing so, all of the entrails will come out covered in stinky green goo. That's a bad omen. We're not going to fight today because of the bad omen. So superstitious Roman soldiers are very, very keen to see how the sacrifices of the animals are going to go. But that's a political thing. That's a military thing. In people's privacy, in their heart of hearts, is that sort of thing going to help comfort you when you're wondering about your place in the world? When you're wondering about the big questions in life? And the answer is less and less that Romans are finding that kind of satisfaction. So Christianity is being born and it begins to spread. But there are also what are called Eastern mystery cults. And what an Eastern mystery cult is a secret society that has all sorts of ideas about how the world works. To be initiated, you need to be invited, or you need to pay your way in. It's like Scientology in that respect. You got to pay lots of money to get in. And you get in on the bottom floor. You learn a few secrets. But then you've got to fast, and you've got to meditate, and you've got to give gifts, and you've got to do things. And you've got to work for your faith. And if you work hard enough for your faith, you become an initiate of a secret mystery. And after being fasting for weeks, and after going through physical pain and ordeals, there comes a moment, one night, where as you're sleeping, you're taken out of your bedroom by bell-wielding cultists. And you're sort of in an altered state because you haven't had a good night's sleep in 3 weeks. and they take you to a special place, and there you witness an animal being sacrificed or a sexual act, or you participate in an animal sacrifice or a sexual act, or you learn some kind of mathematical geometrical form, but you're in an altered state. Maybe there are narcotics involved. The idea is for you to go through an emotional event that's going to change you on a fundamental level. That is the benefit of the mystery religion. They claim to have the secrets of life, and the only way you get it is by paying. But they also show you exciting mysteries by arranging for these almost magical events. These include the Cult of Mithra, which is a soldier's god, a god of fire, and a god of that involves the slaughter of a bull or of a cow. Oh, a bull. At this time, also, the aristocracy of the empire is primarily Italian. That covers the Principate. Tomorrow, we begin the second era of imperial history, the Pax Romana, the 2nd century, the time of the Roman peace. No questions, comments, insights, or thoughts? Thank you.